Boys, tipping is completely out of hand. We've talked about this at length, right? Especially with the lady that didn't give the other woman her paid-for groceries because the tip wasn't big enough and blamed her. It's out of hand. Let's check it out.
Tipping. A generous act of courtesy you do when you're more than satisfied with the service you were providing, and you give them a little extra money. Usually you give these to your servers at restaurants, your barber, and strippers, just as a way of telling them you're doing a good job. Go get yourself a nice pair of undies. And this overall thing is practiced all around the world. It's not exactly a foreign concept for it.
Is it practiced all around the world? I feel like it's much more uncommon than it is common, right? The one I can think of off the top of my head is Europe. Like, that if you get a tip, it's maybe considered rude in some countries, right? I don't know what tipping is like in Afghanistan, for example, but I probably not. People are probably giving extra money, in these, third world type countries. So I think tipping really is a mainstay of the U.S., right? I don't see it being a big issue other places.
Anybody. Tipping is a normal thing, but no place on earth lets it give out the tip more than the U.S. of A. We go X Games mode with the tipping over here, cause we be giving everybody tips. We tip our delivery drivers, taxis, bellhops, housekeepers.
Bro, okay, so guys, there's a guy that comes out every month. We pay him $25 a month. He picks our weeds and maintains the weeds, right? We get a lot of weeds. He got the Square app. Everybody knows what Square is, right? It's like a white little credit card swiper, or you can, charge a card to it, and then you say yes. So that's kind of how we pay. And it asks for a tip after, and I think that's what, I think Square is responsible for tipping going, mega mainstream, because after every purchase you do now on that damn thing, it says, do you want to leave a 15, 20, or 25% tip? Just click what you want, and we'll add it for you. Haha, and it's convenient to add a tip, so people do it, because they feel like social pressure to do it. I try not to do it, except, I'm guilty of accidentally clicking it because I feel pressured to do it because it's asking me. But for the most part, I'm trying to I'm on the mend right now. I'm trying to stick to the classics of tipping, I tip my waiter, I tip, my barber, that kind of stuff. I'm not tipping my weed guy because I don't get tipped at work. Here's the thing. The company should pay you enough to avoid putting that pressure on the person. Why am I the guy that's responsible for this?
Keeping house movers, bartenders. If you're an in-person service, then most likely you accept tips. Even my homie's last job at the gas station, where he just pumped people's gas, he got over $100 in tips in one day. I didn't even know people tip for that. We love to tip everybody except the homeless, but has it gone too far? Let me go off real quick, but I've been seeing tips.
My niece works at a soda shop. Oh my God. She got $150 in tips one night. And she's, making, I think it's $14 an hour or something like that. Which, it's not insane. It's better than a lot of people, but it's not absolutely insane. But they added tips, and as soon as they added tips in, it brought her average wages, average hourly wages, up $4 an hour, because just people were just dropping a dime in, or whatever the case is. It was crazy.
Tipping options where I've never seen them before, like counter services, cashiers. I've never heard of tipping cashiers, but those blue blocks on the iPad beg to differ.
There it is, the Square, the blue blocks. That's what I'm saying. They're taking over the world, guys. The 15, 20, 25. It's the end of the world with these things. I hate Square. They ruined my life.
I went to a concert and I went to the merch booth. I got a hoodie, bro handed me the hoodie, then turned around his iPad for a tip. Now I know these people don't get paid too well, but what in that interaction concurred a tip? Did he slip me $100 bill in a hoodie that I didn't see? I don't think so. I don't think I'm gonna tip. But I would usually see these in local businesses most of the time, so that's all fine and dandy. But I've heard Starbucks is also doing tips. Now, I don't really go to Starbucks because it's just not...
Every coffee shop does tips now, right? It's just part of, anything that is a service to the customer, it's is being offered a tip. And it kind of makes me wonder, is like, at my job, should we start offering tips? Like, dealing with medical, like, you're going to start tipping your doctor. Oh, thanks for fixing me, doc. The insurance wasn't enough. Here's a 15%er on top of that tab because, you know, it wasn't enough, right? At what point did we decide that tipping is a necessary thing? And it's, I mean, obviously we know it's for profit, right? Because that's less money they have to pay to the person, and it kind of pits the consumer against each other because we're trapped in this eternal war fighting each other, saying like, you should have gave me more money. It's like, well, tell your boss to pay you more money. That's not my fault. I'm broke too. The struggle's real, bro.
Not for me. I like my coffee a certain way. I like my coffee how I like my men. Long, black, and Vietnamese. And no offense to you Starbucks employees out there, but I'ma treat y'all like McDonald's and Burger King. Like, why would I tip the drive-through cashier? That just sounds unnecessary. And as long as those restaurants...
Yeah, no. Oh my god, dude. I on this, I go to McDonald's, right? They have the app, and you can choose to tip. I ain't tipping. I didn't do it back. I didn't do it back in 2005 when they had the jar, and I'm not doing it now. You click buttons on a screen. I don't want to sound mean. I really don't. I don't want to sound mean. However, I also do not have a lot of money. And if you think you need more money, then talk to your boss. Don't come to me for it. I'm just trying to get $1 McDouble. You know what I'm saying? They're not even $1 anymore. What am I talking about?
Also not asking for tips, then I'm never gonna tip. Don't get no ideas, please. However, I understand why these workers would want to tip, though. They work low-wage jobs, and sometimes they got families to take care of at home. So a tip or two would make their lives a little bit easier. But I'm selfish. I'm not trying to tip at Wendy's, bro. But I know that day will eventually come. I can smell it. This is the U.S.
Yeah, and that's the problem. People think it's selfish, right? People think that's the moral dilemma that tipping puts people in. It's not selfish. It's absolutely not. There are so many people in similar economic situations as you that just giving extra money on top or feeling like you have to do that is exactly what these big businesses want, like what executives want. They want you to feel that social pressure so they don't have to do it. They don't have to cough up the money for it. And people will do it because, you know, people don't want to be an a-hole. They don't want to be the a-hole or don't feel like the a-hole, even though you're not. Because you're not. You're not an a-hole for not tipping. If you don't tip, you know, that's not a responsibility of yours. It shouldn't be. It's an added social pressure that shouldn't exist.
We'll somehow incorporate tipping into everything so the employers can justify why they're paying their employees minimum wage. And whenever someone doesn't tip, they get mad at us instead of the business that's giving them a non-living wage. That's why tipping...
Yeah, and I was going to make a separate video on this too, but it's like, there's so many examples of people, of these DoorDash drivers, whatever, Uber Eats, Uber drivers, whatever, losing their minds and going after the person for not giving enough tip, because it's like, bro, that's not my fault. You know, when I order DoorDash, like, I tip, okay, I go into the other option and I change that to like $2. And it's not because I hate the driver, right? It's because between all the fees of DoorDash, I feel like they should be able to give these people more money if that's the case, right? Like, I shouldn't have to subsidize $10 an hour for these people just because I'm a lazy ass. And you could argue, well, don't use DoorDash then. No, they offer the service and tips are optional. That's the word, optional. And it's not my fault that the person at the top doesn't pay more. I didn't do that to you. It's not my fault.
Tipping is super pushed. So restaurants, for example, can pay their waiters low salaries to encourage them to aim for tips. So the waiters have to be as upstanding, top of their tippy toes, holly jolly of a worker as possible to try to get ends meet. So the customer can walk away feeling happy about their experience, the owner of the restaurant being happy because of the profit and good look of the business, while the waiters walk away with a $2 tip and food stamps for a salary. Or at least that's just my theory, my game theory. Now, people that have never had a job might say, ain't that a good thing? It makes the waiter...
Speaking of which, it's like, why don't, like, I know some restaurants do this where they split the tips, right, with the cooks, but for the most part, let's be honest, the chef, the people in the back are not getting any of the tip, and I absolutely despise that. I do not want to give a tip to a food carrier, and I'm not saying, like, that they don't work hard or have to deal with annoying people, like they do. But if you've ever worked in a kitchen before, I have. That was one of my first jobs, working in a kitchen. It is a nightmare, and you get no pay. You get, like, no respect. It is just loud. It's hot. It's fast. It was one of the jobs that I had peak anxiety in my life because it's so intense. And you don't get tips for it, right? You don't, because you're not the guy delivering the food. So you don't get the cash on the table or whatever. And that's the thing, even if they are split, you know how many cashiers will just take the money off and just pocket it and, oh yeah, they didn't leave a tip or something like that and just bullshit the rest of the staff? That happens all the time. People are scummy and they're greedy. None of it is fair. But like I said, it is up to the person in charge, the owner of the business, the board of directors, whatever it is at the top, to pay the people more money. Not your job.
To actually try to do their job well, bro. Ain't nobody wanna work minimum wage, period, bro, in this economy. Doesn't matter if I'm getting tips. All it takes is one bad day of penny pinching tips to be like, well, Scoob, I guess we have to eat whatever's in the fridge tonight. I should know. I used to be a waiter. I was a waiter for weddings and other events in my late senior year, and my wage was decent, 15 an hour, and for a high school student, that's pretty good. Plus, I only worked on the weekends. Man, this job was gonna be a breeze. But that was only because I was a kid. I ain't need that much in the first place. All I thought is, if I can afford food, sold.
Yeah, but that's a problem endemic to almost every position, and a lot of them don't, especially if you work in the medical field, right? Everybody thinks people in the medical field are billionaires. I work in the medical field, but I'm not a billionaire, right? Because there's droves of people that make, $14 to $17 an hour, and then there's a few certain people that are pocketing a lot of the profit, right? Or, subsidizing it into the rest of the company, or, investing it into the company, however you want to say. But it's not going to the people. There's millions of people in the medical field that make $14 to $17 an hour, and it's not enough to live on, and they don't get tips. The receptionists, the MAs, medical assistants, believe it or not, do not make a lot of money. At most, they can make $20 an hour. It's something endemic to the entire world, and people use tipping as a way to solve that. And I'm not saying bring tipping to the medical field. That is insane. I'm saying these bosses need to pay more money to the people so they can live.
To spoil the fun, most of the time I did not get any tips or very little tips. And 95% of my gigs was at weddings, so the food was already paid for. I was giving these niggas free food and I got nothing. And I was always all nice and shit. I was never mean. I was all like, hello, hot diggity day, what would you...
It's because they didn't have square back then. They didn't have the blue square. If they had the blue square, you're done. You're going to be tipping. Most people tip. There's probably a study out there on this of, like, people feeling more pressure to hit that button when it's the last screen to add the additional tip on.
Lovely people like to have. I thought I was doing a good job. I even shaved off my hair to be more presentable, which is something I still regret to this day. Don't cut the hair you love for no jobs. Unless it look like this, you might get no job with that. I did get tips sometimes. The biggest tip I've ever gotten was $40 from a table of old white women and a gay dude. And from then on, they became my target audience. I'd always pick the table with the gay niggas, cause I know they'd give me the biggest tip. And me complaining about small tips might sound like a trivial problem, but I'm talking about like in the grand scheme of things of this kind of job. Like if I was an adult with this job.
So somebody said, what about these jobs that are going to be replaced by robots in the future? That's absolutely true. What are we going to do? Tip the robots? No, I mean, it's going to reduce costs even further. And that's the whole point of this, right? Is tipping is just a way to offset some of the employee costs on somebody else. And some of these jobs, you're right, cashier, People at Walmart, like the line waiters or whatever. I mean, they're even making robots that can assemble a burger for you, right? And it'll just shoot it out the window or whatever. And, in the next 10 years, 10, 15 years, maybe even sooner, who knows, a lot of these jobs will be replaced. And that's really what they're wanting, because then you have no employee cost at all. You pay, $20,000 for a machine, and then it's paid off within half a year because you don't have a higher staff of like 8 or something like that. That's exactly what they want to go to, but that's what tipping is, and they're going to continue to do it till they have the ability to not even have to hire that person. So because the whole goal of the business is to offset costs, is to remove as much cost as possible so you can make the profit margin higher.
Paying bills, taxes, rent, all that. I could not live like this. I know this because I had coworkers in their late 20s, 30s, 40s who said they couldn't take care of themselves with this wage. That's why they sold drugs on the side. That's why we should hold these businesses accountable to have higher wages for their employees so they don't have to rely on tips anymore. We must rise against this corrupt business practice. Who's with me? Hey, you're just saying this because you just don't want to pay tips no more. Well, yes. Duh. I don't like.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true. Of course, I don't want to pay tips anymore, and most of you shouldn't want to pay tips either. We're paying $3,000 a month for rent in some cities. My house, I'm paying $1,780, if you can believe it. But I'm very lucky, and that's still a lot of money for me, right? And that's a lot of money for anybody. The rent cost is completely out of touch with reality, and people don't make enough to live in these standards. And then people are being asked to give additional sums of money when they're already in a position where they can't even pay for the stuff that they have. The bare minimum, and they're being asked for more. And I think what's even scarier, or something that is going to be interesting to see how we deal with as a species, is when AI and robots, things like that, start replacing some of these lower level jobs. Because let's be honest, right? A cashier is not an insanely hard job to do. Fries, you hit the fry button. Burger, you hit the burger button. It's not a hard job to replace or have something replace it. So I'm very, that's an entirely separate video on its own, but I mean, the problem is already bad, but I think that, people are going to be even more fucked in general when they start getting replaced, because that's just going to be more money that we can save for the big businesses, right? They're going to be able to make more profit while further putting down the people at the bottom.
Tipping? Who does? Who wants to pay more of their own money when they don't have to? I'm not a misogynist, a masochist. Wrong word. I am the other one. I'm not saying I don't tip. I do. But mainly because I want to at least try to balance out my good deeds with my bad ones when I'm in the pearly gates. I'm not trying to go to hell because I didn't tip my IHOP waitress who so happened to be battling cancer and diabetes that one time. I'm trying to get to heaven. But if I gave 0, darns, dangs, or I would almost never tip. I would look at the bill, then pay the bill, then end it there. I would only tip if I were...
I mean, seriously, think about it. How many times have you gone out, whether, it's a restaurant or just to do an activity, and then it comes time for the tip, and you paid $100, like it cost $100 for that activity, whatever it is, and then the 15, 20, 25% came up on the screen. 20% of $100 is another $20. There's never a point where you have more anxiety as a person than when that bill comes. And it's not necessarily because of the cost all the time, but because of that tip, because you're like, oh my God, now I got to pay another 20% on top of that. It's like, man, I got a phone bill coming up. And it's like, you could argue, hey, like, just don't go out. Yeah, or you could just argue, hey, pay the guy more money, so your patron, the person trying to pay at your business and go, to the business, doesn't have to, have a panic attack when they get the bill. And, people say like, oh, the cost will just get, dropped to the person, which, that's entirely possible. You're right. Instead of $100, you're paying for $120, right? So they can just give that money to the person. You could argue that, sure. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily the case. That's like the, the $15 burger thing, if we make the minimum wage $15, all the burgers will be $15. I don't think that'll necessarily happen because of price competition. There's always going to be a business that wants to drive the cost down. so they get more patrons in the door. So there will always be that notion at play that kind of combats that. So, just because your McDonald's paying your employees $15 an hour doesn't mean all the burgers are going to be $15, because Burger King, you will make them the same cost that they were, because they want your business more, and that price difference is worth it for them. So
receive outstanding service, because most services nowadays are just average, regular stuff, nothing to point out. But you still supposed to tip. In a perfect world, I would only tip if the person is enthusiastically nice. Fast service, give me a back massage, and also pay for my food. Then I would tip. I can understand tipping delivery drivers because they also need the money to pay for their gas, but I can go with the higher wage argument that I said earlier. And if they show up mad late, then I don't have to tip them. We should bring back the 30 minutes or less, or the food is free rule. I'd start ordering food from Russia on purpose. Save myself a stack. And like I said earlier, I know these people need these tips.
I think we need to just go back to what a tip used to be, right? What did tips actually mean? They need to be like just what the word says. It doesn't have to feel mandatory. It's like, wow, like I thought that was insane. Like I thought it was so good that I'm going to give you extra money. That's what it should be again. But now it's like they could spit in your food and take a dump in your Coca-Cola, and you're like, here's 15%. It's so stupid.
To survive. I know they have mouths to feed. I know. I feel you. But in the back of my mind, I know I have mouths to feed too.
True.
My own mouth. And tipping is slowly taking that away from me. Now I'm gonna starve. And remember earlier when I said tipping is not a foreign concept? Well, apparently it is to most countries. Every time I look in the comment section for a post regarding tipping, 90% of the comments will be from foreigners saying, well, over here in Timbuktu, Jumanji land, we never even heard of tipping. I didn't even know Jumanji was a real place, but it sounds like heaven if they don't tip. And it makes me think the people of the U.S. here are purposely fucking me with this tipping shit. It's to be expected we tip 20 to 25% of the bill here. You have a better chance pulling a gun on me and robbing me, because that's the only way you're gonna get that much money out of me. And I've been seeing news reports about how there's a spread of self-checkout machines with tipping options. Who the hell am I tipping? Mr. and Mrs. Walmart themselves.
Oh God, we're gonna start tipping the AI. Oh, thanks, Chat GPT. Here's $2. Oh God, maybe that's true. When these people get replaced, these like lower level jobs and things, we're still gonna be tipping. We're gonna tip the company for the quicker AI service. Oh God, it's doom.
Why they need my money? Why they need a tip? Any self-checkout tipping machine out there could suck the tip of my pee-pee. That's what you could do. And like I said earlier, I do tip my delivery drivers and waiters. I do. But I hate tipping. I bloody hate it. If I could abolish it, I would. I hate it. However, I know it's the right thing to do. Or at least I was raised to believe if I don't tip my waiters, I'm a which I don't really believe now, but I begrudgingly admit tipping won't kill me, so I still tip. How much I tip? None of your beeswax. And even though I tip,
I still tip too, because it's a societal thing that we were raised up on. It's it's a cultural norm to tip, right? You are a bad person if you don't tip, and I don't think it gets better unless everybody collectively decides to not tip. But how many times have I talked about doing the everybody quit that thing? It never works, right? When there's never a big enough population that leaves and stops doing a certain thing to change, because there's always shit eaters out there that are good and comfortable in their cozy little turd hole. So it doesn't change unless we change the way we think about it, and I think it's personally out of control. So
most of the time, I'm not gonna tell y'all you should tip. You could do whatever you want with the money you've earned. Like, I could be spending my money on helping the children in Africa and building houses there. But how else am I supposed to pay for my drip? I need money for my clothes, man. Those kids in Africa, they're not gonna pay for me. But yeah, those are my thoughts on tipping. Employees need better pay, so I can stop paying. And in conclusion,
element of surprise. Did you pray today?
Good video. I'll link that in chat for you guys.